Hello and welcome. This is Little Wave at Your Stars Within. I am here today to talk with you about all of the retrogrades that are going to be happening in September of 2023. We have so much coming in. I want to break it down. I want to give you dates. I want to give you degrees so that if you are at the point that you know how to look at your chart and look at the degrees, you'll be able to see what things are affecting you specifically. So I'm going to give a lot of information about each of these retrogrades. I'm then going to give you sort of an overview of how I interpret this time period, kind of merging all of it together. But I want you to remember that the way you're going to feel this has more to do with which of these retrogrades are more specifically on a planet or a point in your chart. And then from there, what types of planet and points, right? Your sun, your moon, if this is on or squaring or opposite a luminary, that's going to be pretty huge. If you have a big T-square in your chart and this is activating a point of it, you're going to feel that. A different retrograde that doesn't really do a whole lot in your chart, it's not on an angle, it's not on a planet, you're going to have an effect. It's still somewhere in your chart. It's still in a house, which is an area of life of yours that is undergoing change, but it's not going to be felt as prominently. So in order to determine what out of all these retrogrades is like the biggest way you're going to experience this, you really do need to look at which of these planets is strongest on a planet or point of your chart. And I'll do my best to give you the information needed so that you'll be able to figure that out. Okay, so let's just talk about what's going on. Venus has been in retrograde in the sign of Leo, and she is going to station to go direct. So she's already been retrograde from about 28 Leo, and she's going all the way back to 12 Leo. Stations when she kind of looks like she slows down or pauses before she goes forward again. So in September, during all these retrogrades, technically she will be forward as of September 4th, but she'll be in what's called her shadow period. She's moving back through the degrees that she just retrograded through. So she retrograded from 28 degrees to 12. She stations at 12 degrees Leo on September 4th, and she'll be working her way back in a direct motion, but from 12 to 28 until October 7th. That will be her shadow period. So she's still completing. So remember that in any retrograde cycle, there's the first shadow period. We don't generally call that retrograde yet, but it's, coming through the degrees the first time in forward motion. Then it stations and retrogrades. It looks like it's going backwards. We call that a retrograde. Then it stations and we say, oh, retrograde is done, but it's not. It needs to come back through these degrees. So it coming in that first time is like, oh, that's what this is going to be about for me, right? It can feel overwhelming or chaotic or emotional, but the issue rises. In the retrograde, we're really dealing with it. If we didn't catch what it meant coming in, we're definitely going to feel it at the retrograde. This is the inner work. This is the change. This is the inner confrontation. If we've successfully done our inner work coming forward, we put that into action. Our new understanding comes into action. Okay, so if you have planets or points between the 12 and 28 degrees of the fixed signs, if it's in Leo, then this Venus retrograde is conjuncting that planet or point. If it's in Aquarius, then that planet or point is being opposited by the Venus retrograde. And if it's in Scorpio or Taurus, it's squaring, 90-degree angle. So she'll be stationing, which is pretty strong as she shifts into forward motion on September 4th. Jupiter is going to go retrograde on September 5th. So Jupiter is stationing to go backwards while Venus is stationing to go forward. And they're going to be in a square of each other. So we're going to have a Venus-Jupiter square going on in the sky. Jupiter stations to go retrograde at 15 degrees Taurus. Okay? So again, planets or points in that 15-ish realm will be affected by this Venus-Jupiter square, that mid-range of the fixed signs. Fixed signs again, Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio. Now, Venus starts to go forward, so she's moving 12, 13, 14, she's going to go back to 28. Jupiter's going backwards, right? So he starts going from 15, 14, 13. He's going to go as far back as 5, okay? And the shadow of Jupiter, if you want to say, what is this Jupiter retrograde going to be about for me? Again, look at if you have planets or points around 5 to 15 of the fixed signs. And that shadow period, the first time he went in normal motion, but from 5 to 15, was from June 9th until September 5th. So just taking a look at what was being affected in your life at that time. He'll then retro on September 5th. And he will be in retro from September 5th until December 31. So it will be for the rest of the year. He'll go forward again in the new year in 2024. But he'll still be in that shadow moving from 5 to 15 through March. Now remember, Jupiter expands. So if the 5 to 15 of the fixed signs, if you have planets there, he's going to be expanding something for you. Very often it's gifts, very often it's blessings. But if there's an issue that needs to be dealt with, if there's a T-square maybe already in your chart, if there's something that needs to be understood, he can make the issue so big that you deal with it. And that is in itself a blessing. And we have to say thank you for that. Eventually, we can be in our process around it while we're in it. But just keep in mind that sometimes that expansion is to make us see something, to make us actually deal with it. At the same time, Mercury is going to be retrograde. Now remember, Mercury goes retrograde the most. He goes retrograde 3 times a year. And this is a time for the non-linear. The mind wants to go to the right brain instead of the left brain. We want to get out of linear thinking. We want to get out of logic and doing. If we count the shadow periods, Mercury is in retrograde 50% of the year. What does that tell me? That tells me that we're not meant to be doing all the time. That the natural pattern and process of life, we do some, we sit back, reflect. It's a fine time to complete. You might complete something that you've started before. You might sit back and reflect on it, reassess, re-examine, reconsider, right? All those re's. And then there'll be a time to go forward again. And then a reflection. So we don't want to take on new activities, new commitments. This is not a great time to sign any kind of contracts. This is not a great time to go forward or do anything new here in September. It is a great time to go back to things that we've begun and give them new eyes. It is a time to do creative and artistic work and to sit back and allow inspiration to flow in, to allow understanding and insight that can't be gotten to through the logical, deductive reasoning type thinking, but to allow, in that space of flow, aha, to come in. So let's see, that Mercury retrograde begins the actual retro part on August 24th at 21 degrees Virgo. So the shadow was since August 4th back at 8 degrees Virgo. And it went from 8, 9, 10, all the way to 24. And then it goes retro here on August 24th. And it's going to go retro back to 8 degrees. Okay. And then it's going to station and go forward again. And it'll station and go forward on September 16th. So that shadow on the other side will be done, sometime early to mid-October. So any planets or points in the 8 to 21 degree range, and I would stay in those ranges with retrograde. If you have planets at 22 or 23, the way I interpret is they're going to be affected maybe from the outcome of the retrograde, but not until after the retrograde when that degree is actually crossed. So with retrograde, I really do keep to the degrees of the retrograde. I don't have orbs around that. And so 8 to 21 degrees of Virgo, the mutable signs. So if you have planets or points in 8 to 21 of Virgo, then that'll be conjunct the Mercury retrograde. right? If it's 8 degrees to 21 of Pisces, it'll be opposite, and 8 to 21 of Gemini or Sagittarius, it'll be in square. Okay. Saturn has been in retrograde since June 18 at 7 degrees Pisces. Okay, so this is our early Pisces degrees. So if you have planets or points around that 7 degrees Pisces, it's being affected by the Saturn retrograde that's already been in effect for a while. And then that Mercury retrograde is going to come in opposite that. So, pay attention to that. You might have been feeling this more in early August when Mercury was more on those degrees, those early degrees. And you'll feel it again as Mercury gets back there, which is around September 16. Okay, so Saturn is in retrograde, started at 7 degrees Pisces back on June 18th of 23. That shadow actually started back in March, but we don't need to think too much. With these slower moving planets, the shadow periods can be harder to understand or to see how they affect us because the effect is more subtle. It has a longer term, longer range effect. It's a more underlying subtle effect happening over a longer time period of our life. So it's harder to sometimes see and feel those shadow periods. Those faster moving planets, Venus and Mercury, we really feel those shadow periods because it's within a couple weeks of it coming right back at us in retrograde. So I wouldn't put as much emphasis on the shadow period right now. I don't think that that's as helpful to understanding it. But you do want to know that he is in retro to 0 Pisces. So from 7 to 0, and he'll station at 0 to go forward again, back through 7. And that will be on November 4th. So he has been in retrograde since June and will be in retrograde in September of 23 while all these other planets are in retro. Remember, Saturn is teaching us lessons. He's bringing our karmas to fruition. It's where we're asked to work hard and to mature. So if you're having planets or points between the 0 and the 7 of Pisces, opposite 0 or 7 of Virgo, or squares 0 to 7 of Sagittarius and Gemini, this is an area, right? Whatever house that's in, whatever planet that's aspecting, this is an area that you are being held to accountability, nose to the grindstone. It is not a fun time. It doesn't have to be the worst suffering. We often experience it as suffering because we fight it. We say, no, I want to have fun. And it's not a fun period. It's a hardworking period. But if we engage ourselves with discipline, with hard work, with routine, with structure, right? All of those things that the divine masculine brings to us. When we embrace that with Saturn and say, okay, I'll do that work. I'll step into my karmic truth. I will accept the lessons in front of me. I will step and act from my highest maturity, because the goal of all Saturn is always maturation. So when we accept and act from the highest maturity, we can witness and recognize lower maturity. We can say, oh, I want to respond like this. I want to act like this. I want to go to bed late. I want to eat junk food. But when we say, but I'm not going to, and we act from the highest maturity, then Saturn's just kind of right there watching us. When we start to wander from that maturity, he presses on us and forces us back into that upright position. So wherever that's going on for you, if that's going on in a planet or point, is a time period that you're in a very hardworking time period and a maturational period. So keep in mind that especially in those early degrees, right around that 7 degree, you're going to have both Saturn's going retrograde or is retrograding involving that degree, and Mercury is retrograding around that degree as well. So I think that brings some insight or awareness in those, we'll say around the 7-8 degree of those mutable signs. There's hard work and there's understanding. So there's an aha that needs to happen through that hard work. There's maybe a mental maturation that's going to happen in that area as well, not just behavioral. Okay, let's continue forward. Uranus is also in retrograde in September. He moves into retrograde on August 29th at the 23 degree of Taurus. So we're back at Taurus. Remember, Venus and Jupiter were in the fixed signs, Venus in Leo, Jupiter at Taurus. But Jupiter in Taurus was in that 15 to 5, right, going backwards there. this is at the 23 to 19. So they're not in the same spot. They will conjunct later. So Uranus is at 23 degrees Taurus, and it will retro to 19. And it will, so it's only a couple of degrees, right? But it will retro until January 27th. So you'll feel each one of those degrees, right? The 23, the 22, the 21. It sits there for a while. So the shadow period of this started in May of 23, like I said, with these longer, slower moving planets that take longer. I don't want you to think so much about the shadow period. I think that can just water down or confuse what you need to understand. So at the end of September, though, Venus will be finishing her retrograde, right? She'll be coming towards the end. She finishes October 7th. So she'll be at the 22 degree of Leo coming out of her retrograde. And Uranus will be at the 22 of Taurus going into his. So they will be in a square. So there might be some relationship surprises or upsets or shifts because, Venus always involves relationship and Uranus always brings surprise. But I would really look at what houses these are in your chart. Many relationships function perfectly happy through these transits, obviously. So you don't want to go to doom, gloom, and fear. That's never helpful. It could be even a positive surprise. And just depending on where this hits for planets or points, if that Venus-Uranus square in the sky is maybe hitting your moon, you might have a lot of emotion about something. Your mother might tell you something surprising, or maybe suddenly your childhood home is going to be sold. So a lot of different ways that this type of energy can express itself. But so we want to know from May all the way through the end of August was the shadow period. We go into retrograde at the 23 degree of Taurus. We stay there till January 27th of 2024, where we get to the 19 degree of Taurus. And then we will go forward and not come out of that shadow period till May. So if you have planets or points, right, somewhere that Uranus is having an interaction with, it's going to be about a year on and off of that point, right? So if you have any planet or point, the 19 to 23 degree of the fixed signs, Taurus, conjunct, Scorpio, opposite, Leo, and Aquarius squares, okay? If you have a planet or point between 19 and 23 there, what's going to happen is between May of 23 and May of 24, you're going to undergo major changes to that area. That part of your life is going to change in surprising ways. And by the end of that year, it's going to be different than you could have imagined. And if you can hold on through that crazy ride, because that year is going to have lots of different surprises, and if you can hold on, if you can trust, because Uranus is a consciousness shift. So you can't know the consciousness beyond your consciousness. It is unfathomable. So he's going to take you in ways that you've never been. He's going to shake that tree. He's going to remove things you didn't want removed. You're going to think the goal was here, and then boom, there's a different goal. So you have to go with the ride. Uranian energy can bring a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental overstimulation. It can bring a lot of mental health issues because he dances on that line. Am I crazy? Am I genius? Am I crazy? Am I genius? He's both, right? Because that line of evolution, that leap, that faith, that complete change of consciousness is crazy, right? It's an insane leap of faith that we have to take. And we have to hold that trust as we go through it. If we release and we let go of that trust, we can go into all kinds of anxieties and why is this happening to me? And we might not get to that next consciousness that it was trying to take us to. So if you can understand that process and know that that's going on for you, then that can help you to hold that trust through those difficult and chaotic moments, because the Uranian energy will bring chaotic moments. It is the wind, it is the storm, it is the lightning strike, right? It is the unknown and the unexpected. So then, we know that, say, May of 24 to May of 25 will bring the next set of degrees, right? From 23 to maybe 27 or something like that. So you can look ahead. Do you have planets or points? If you're Uranus, if you're around 42, 43, depending on where you're born in the elliptical, and your Uranus in your birth chart is maybe 23 or 25 degrees of Scorpio, you're going to have what's called your Uranian opposition. That's a normal developmental stage that everybody goes through with a midlife crisis. If you have any planet or point at those next couple degrees, you can say, okay, I'm going to go through major change in this time period. And you can know that. And you don't need to be afraid of that. You have to remember that life is always acting in your highest good. It is always acting for your spiritual growth and development. Sometimes that is the loss of something that keeps us too content, too contained, or not big enough, not expressing our gifts. So sometimes we're not happy with the unexpected change that Uranus brings, but it is always in the service of your highest good. Okay, Neptune. Neptune's been in retro since July 1 at 27 degrees Pisces. She's only going back to 24. So we're getting slower and slower moving planets, right? Long periods of time to go only a couple of degrees. So we want to get really specific. If you were at the 22 degrees, probably last year that was affected. If you're at the 29 degrees, next year you're affected. So, we want to be really specific. This is when you're going through these kind of changes. So Neptune's going between the 24 and the 27. She's been doing this since February of 23. She was in shadow. July 1, she went retro at 27, and she'll go direct on December 7th of 2023 at 24 degrees of Pisces. So if you have anything between the 24 and the 27 degrees of Pisces, it's conjuncting it. Neptune's conjuncting it. Virgo, Neptune's opposing. Sagittarius and Gemini, Neptune would be squaring that. So Neptune, right, she can bring a lot of illusion. You need to remember that. So we want to use a lot of discernment when we're in a Neptunian transit. It can be like smoke and mirrors. It can be like sand through your fingers. What you thought something was, it wasn't. There can be a lot of disillusionment. I often think of how Neptune rules things like fame. It looks so great till you have it, right? So what I think about with Neptune, though, why do we get illusion? Well, because the real thing is in there. We reach in that bag, right? And it's like the true enlightenment, the false enlightenment, the true guru, the false guru, right? There's everything from enlightenment to drug addiction to music, right? The real thing is in there. The soulmate, right? The real thing is in there. But so are all these illusions. And if you fall for an illusion, it was something you needed to learn. You needed to learn the discernment about why this was not true. You have to learn it then. And only you can discern these things for yourself. So we want to know that huge blessings and spiritual opportunities come with Neptune, but also huge possibilities of disillusionment as well. And so really, if we look to like, is Saturn helping us? A Saturn aspect at the same time could actually be useful because it could help ground us. It could help really keep us in higher discernment. Pluto went retro back in May at 0 degrees Aquarius. If you remember, there was all the, memes and everything talking about Pluto's in Aquarius, but it only went to 0 degrees. And now it's going backwards through Capricorn, 29, 28, 27. Again, slowest moving planet. So all that time to just go those 3 degrees. Pluto's generally about a 2 to 3 year process. So if Pluto is going through the degrees of the planet or point of yours, you've got a 3-year deep transformational process happening. This is going to be slow. So he'll go direct October 11th at 27 Capricorn. From there, he'll go forward again, 27, 28, 29, 0, 1, and 2. Back over in 2024, he'll retrograde again and go through the 2, 1, 0, and 29. So if you have anything in the 29 Capricorn through the 0, 1, 2 Aquarius, you're not done yet. If you're in the 27 and 28, you'll be done at, when this is complete. And if you look forward, if you have anything in the, 3, 4, 5 of Aquarius, it'll be conjuncting over the next couple of years. Leo opposing, Scorpio, Taurus squaring. So there's a lot going on with our fixed signs right now. But those at the end of Capricorn, which would be the cardinal signs, right? So oppositing Capricorn is Cancer, so the 27, 28, 29 of Cancer, and the squares being Aries and Libra. Those have been under big transformation for the last number of years. The 26 degree just got done. So if you're at 26, you just went through it. There was 6 hits of that. That was a lot. Okay. So wherever Pluto is going to bring, deep, deep transformation, like what is transformed in a way that could never go back. I think of the caterpillar process, right, where it becomes almost completely liquid in that cocoon, or the phoenix rising. She burns for 90% of that process, not knowing that she's going to rise. So it's really a dissolution. It's really a releasing process. Pluto's Hades, rules the underworld, right? God of hell in that way. And so, manipulations, abuses, karmas like that come to the surface. We can be the victim of it. We can be the perpetrator of it. But deep, deep transformation when you're going through a Pluto process. Okay, so that gives you quite an overview of what's been going on and will be going on with the retrogrades. The last thing I really want to talk about here is to understand that in September of 2023, we have all this going on at the same time. We've had some of these retrogrades for quite some time, but having all of them at the same time, what does that mean? Even if a number of these affect my chart, how do I even begin to interpret that? So I want to say that I want you to think about retrograde as a deeply internal process. The energies are very strong and powerful, but instead of expressing themselves outward in your life in some external event or person, they're expressing themselves internally. So this is a time period for everyone of very deep change, very deep transformation. We'll probably see some deep transformation in society. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some throwbacks to previous issues in society that have maybe been quieted for a while, we haven't heard from in a while, and may resurface. Really thinking about how you are becoming the person you're here to become. This is a deep, quiet cocoon period. This is not a go out and play and run around town type of period. You can do that, but you're not serving yourself. You're not supporting the energy as it exists. So this month of September it's a time for sadhana, right? A time for deep spiritual work, for deep reflection on oneself and for inner growth. It's a time to reach inward to that which is beyond me, greater than me. It's a time to develop humility, a time to develop devotion. And so in supporting that process, any kind of creative, right? Retrogrades are always great for the nonlinear, for the creative, art and writing and music. Any kind of reflective meditation, reading things that are, making you think about higher concepts, broader, not this plus this equals that. You don't want to be in that linear or deductive thought. We also want to see it as a time period to deepen our spiritual understanding. With so many planets inwardly focused, this is a really great time for spiritual work. And so if you're drawn in that direction. I also want to say that anything that you've been wanting to do or have started before but not completed, this could be a really great time to go back to that project. It's possible that that wasn't the right time for it, and this is a time that you're going to make movement on it. It might not be the time you're going to complete it. You may go back to this bigger project or idea or vision you have for yourself and your life. You may go back to it through many retrogrades before it's ready to come forward, not in a retrograde. Old people may come back, old issues might return, old behaviors. Maybe you haven't struggled with that issue in a long time. That's okay. Be gentle with yourself. Everything's in retrograde. everything's revisiting. And we often kind of step back before we go forward, sort of like an arrow pulling back, right? Or a little cha-cha before we go forward for good. So if old issues arise, or you notice a change in your emotion, a change in your behavior, a change in your thinking, and you're like, wow, I thought I was over that. Don't beat yourself up. Just work with yourself and think of it as the last of the remnants, pulling up any last remnants that are not serving you and in your way, and just, hand them over. Ask life to show you the way. A humble ask is, I find, generally responded to. And just, handing it over and healing it and really cleansing the last of whatever these things are about so that you can move forward. As all of these energies move forward later in 23 and some of them into 24, will be in a faster momentum period. And you'll have like your runway really clear because you did this internal work of removing the debris. So I hope that that's helpful for your understanding. I hope everyone has the support that they need through this time period. If you feel like you'd like to take a look at this more specifically for yourself, you're welcome to reach out. We can take a look at your chart and look at how all of these retrogrades are going to be affecting you, along with what some of the recommendations might be that might help you to move through this in the most positive and productive way. We don't have to learn from deep suffering. We don't. We often choose to learn from suffering because the whispers of life we don't listen to, and we make life get hard on us to learn. So let us choose to embrace our learning, that we are here on earth for a reason, and let us be willing to do the work that we're here to do. Thank you all for watching. I wish you well, and until the next time.